How are y'all doing? Welcome back to my channel. I'm your host Addie, and I welcome you all to another episode of my podcast Unspoken, where I speak to my heart's content. For this episode, I have a lot of things to say. This is going to be a review of the Peaky Blinders series and the entire series, but specifically the last season, because as you guys know, the last season came out recently. The last episode was fairly recent. So I wanted to talk about it because, I'm impressed. Okay. Oh, by the way, before I begin, I would like to say that since I'm going to give a review, this is not a no spoilers review. Okay, I am going to give spoilers because there's a lot of things that I want to say. So just so you know that in case you haven't watched it yet, watch the last season, I would suggest that you don't listen to this, because spoilers ahead. Okay, so first things first, I started watching Peaky Blinders only last year, like 2021. I actually became a Cillian Murphy fan back in February. So, oh my god, wait, I just realized it's been already a year. Time flies because I still remember it like it was yesterday. The time that I started fangirling over Cillian Murphy for obvious reasons. I mean, he's one of the finest actors I have ever seen. So underrated. He deserves so much recognition. Peaky Blinders is one of his finest works. I mean, first of all, if we talk about the character Tommy Shelby and we talk about Cillian Murphy, they are completely like polar opposites to each other. And Cillian Murphy has said that how exhausting it is to do that, play the part, but he does it effortlessly. Like when I first started watching Peaky Blinders, I didn't recognize Cillian Murphy at all. It wasn't Cillian Murphy. It was Tommy Shelby. He doesn't do the, he doesn't act as the character. He becomes the character. And this is not only for, Peaky Blinders. I mean, this is true for all his works. I mean, I have watched quite some movies. Like I started with Batman. That's where I saw Cillian first, and you see Jonathan Crane, the Scarecrow character, and then you also see him in Inception. I mean, amazing, exceptional. So yeah, about Tommy Shelby. So Tommy Shelby is iconic not only because it's amazingly written. I mean, the character is so well written, and the character development and everything. And along with that, we have Cillian Murphy. And okay, this is turning into a Cillian Murphy fangirling podcast. Sorry, I actually wanted to talk about the entire series. Okay, so first of all, if we talk about the plot, say of the entire series, not just season 6, the way it started and the way it ended, it was almost like an evolution journey. Tommy's character, I mean, it centered around Tommy's character, but not just Tommy, every character in the series, especially the ones in the Shelby family, they evolved and they changed. And that was quite impressive. I mean, human beings, they change. They never remain the same. And for Tommy Shelby, the ending, I'm gonna come into that a little later. The way the character went through the journey and the ending was so impressive. But before that, I would like to talk about someone without whom Peaky Blinders is incomplete. That is Polly. Now, we unfortunately lost Helen last year, and she was, of course, one of the finest actresses, and it was a huge loss. And we all knew that it would be very difficult to watch season 6 of Peaky Blinders without Helen, without Aunt Polly, because like Cillian Murphy said, she was the heart of the show. And if you have watched Peaky Blinders, you would know that she was as if she was the one who held the entire structure of Peaky Blinders, because she was the one who could kind of, I wouldn't say control Tommy, but she was the one who was at par with Tommy. You know, like Tommy listened to Aunt Polly, not only just listened to her, but also like took advices, and it's as if it didn't seem like that, but I felt like he was in some way or the other dependent on Aunt Polly. And Aunt Polly's absence in season 6 was felt very greatly. But something that I have to appreciate is, despite her absence, I love the fact how they made Aunt Polly such an important part of the season. There is that one thing that Aunt Polly said, that there is going to be a war in the family and one of you is going to die. The entire season 6 is based on what Aunt Polly said. And I mean, not only that, but in season 6, with everything, the way everything evolved, including the change in Tommy, the change in Arthur, them feeling lost without Aunt Polly, in every step of the season, we felt how important Aunt Polly was. And also Aunt Polly is, because towards the end, I mean, we even saw Tommy talking about Aunt Polly throughout the season, and he said that he could still, talk to her and stuff. So despite her absence, she was still one of the most important characters in this season. And that's something I really loved. And then if we talk about all the characters and how their story ended, I mean, this ending was like all the characters, their story arc came to an end, and it was done beautifully. And I love the fact that how they brought back characters like Linda and Esme, the way they brought back all these characters so that their story could be closed. I don't know how to explain this. Like, their story also came to an end. Like, there was a conclusion to the stories of these characters. Even Alfie, I mean, the way we saw him, first of all, I have to say how iconic Tom Hardy is. I mean, that was, one of the finest characters I have ever seen. And Tom Hardy did an amazing job with the accent and things. I mean, Tom Hardy had one of the best iconic dialogues ever. The things that he said to Tommy, they were so iconic. Speaking of Alfie, one thing that always comes to my mind when I talk of Tommy as well as Alfie, the way the series dealt with death. I mean, even with Alfie, when, he was shot on the face, but he survived, but he kept on saying that I'm already dead. And even with Tommy and Arthur, they believed that they already died when they were serving in the First World War, and whatever time they have now, after the First World War, that's extra time. That's why they did not have the fear of death, because they thought they are already getting extra time. The way this death became a symbol in this entire series, the way they dealt with this, I found it really impressive. Now, if we talk about Tommy himself, like the way the character developed, the first thing that I have to say is it all ended where it started. We saw how Tommy was traumatized in season 1, because of his service in the First World War and because of the things that he have been through. It started with his trauma of the First World War, and it ended with that armistice, that bell ringing, and he said that finally at peace. Okay, this is a symbolic thing. I didn't understand it first. I saw someone explain it on Twitter. So at the 11th hour, the World War ended, the First World War ended at the 11th hour of November 11. So when he was going to kill the doctor in the end, and just at the 11th hour, the bell rang, he said, finally, peace. This symbolizes that from the beginning of the first season, all he has been trying is to dig that tunnel. Like the symbol of tunnel, not really, literally, but metaphorically. All he has been trying is to get out of that dark space, which was symbolized by the tunnel. That the tunnel in which he was in the First World War, and he tried to dig it up and come out, see light. That was happening, the exact thing was happening in his life, but metaphorically. So all that he wanted was to come out of the tunnel, and finally, in the 11th hour, he realized that he has come out of that tunnel in the 11th hour, and finally, he was at peace. Initially, we saw in season 5, he was saying that one day I will find someone who's more powerful than me, whom I cannot defeat. And he thought it was probably Oswald Mosley. But in this season 6, in the end, he realized that the only person who can defeat Tommy Shelby, the only person who can kill Tommy Shelby is Tommy Shelby himself. That's why they created this conspiracy so that Tommy would kill himself, but in the end, we all saw what happened. So that is something, this metaphor of the tunnel, and then him realizing that he's the only one who can kill himself, and him finding peace is really symbolic. I mean, this entire season is so symbolic. And when we talk about symbols, we have to talk about that one iconic scene where there was that wagon, and in that wagon there were all his possessions of his past life, like his wife's Grace's picture, even her hair. Tommy kept a piece of her hair. Ruby, Aunt Polly, then John Shelby, all those things that he kept in that wagon, and all of those were burning, and they shot it from inside, and they showed Tommy on a white horse's back, and then he rode off. That was such a symbolic scene. It was showing how his history, his past was burning, and he was finally riding a white horse. A white horse symbolizes peace, right? So he was finally at peace, and he could finally leave that dark tunnel behind. Another very beautiful scene that I wanted to talk about is the scene where he meets Ruby in the end. Ruby's death was the saddest thing in this season, along with Aunt Polly. And in the end, when they showed that scene where he was again meeting Ruby, it was like he finally could say goodbye to her properly, and it was like she was the one who kind of saved him, because if it wasn't for her, maybe he would have taken his own life. But it was because of her, in the end, he realized that it was all a conspiracy against him, and he was actually not sick. So that Ruby meeting Tommy, that scene was really beautiful. And there was another scene that I really particularly liked, was that scene where Arthur came to know that Tommy has tuberculosis and he won't live long. And that scene was so emotional. And the part where Arthur said that Johnny, first this was Johnny Boy and now it's you, that really broke my heart. And but the scene was beautiful. And when Tommy was saying that even when I'm not here, my legacy will be here and everybody will get paid because that's who I am money. And then Arthur was like, that's what you think you are? And he didn't say much, but with his actions, he showed how important Tommy is. And Tommy is loved. And the one thing that I really loved is towards the end when he knew that the doctor was also involved in the conspiracy, but he did not kill the doctor. That showed the change in Tommy Shelby's character, like how he evolved. I mean, the way we saw him in season 1 and then the way we saw him in season 6, the massive difference in him. He was still Tommy Shelby, but there was a change in him. And also that this is also another symbol, this is also a symbolic thing, like him not killing the doctor. And then that part where he demolished the house and went back to being a gypsy, went back to gypsy life. That's also something which is symbolic, like it all ends where it started. And I think all of us were kind of expecting the last episode to be very sad, and I was scared that they were gonna kill off Tommy Shelby, but it didn't happen. And it wasn't sad at all. It was so beautiful. I don't know how to explain. I felt like a weight was lifted off my chest. Another thing which I really found interesting is how we saw the more vulnerable side of Tommy. I wasn't really expecting it, and I mean the contrast we saw from that scene from one of the previous seasons where Tommy said, "I'm not God, not yet." And in this season, he was saying that he was just a mere mortal man. The contrast was really beautiful and it was really symbolic again. So this vulnerable side of Tommy, and I mean, there were some scenes where it really felt like Tommy, like I could literally feel Tommy's helplessness through the screen. So yeah, this is something which is worth mentioning. And there is one thing which I also want to say honestly. Tommy and Lizzie's relationship, I found it really complicated. Did Tommy ever actually love Lizzie, or did he marry Lizzie just because Lizzie was the mother of his child? Because in the end, I felt like Lizzie really loved Tommy, but she didn't feel like the feeling was reciprocated. Somewhere or the other, I was kind of expecting that the relationship would end this way. They would go on their separate ways. And somewhere I also kind of felt like Grace was the only woman whom he truly loved. Now, I could be wrong, but this is my interpretation. In the entire season, it was really heavy, and I was like really scared for the last episode, but in the end it's beautiful. I mean, I have to say this, that it exceeded my expectations. It was almost poetic, all the symbols that were used in the last episode. I just loved it. I would like to say that the entire series, it is worth watching. It's so beautifully done, and not only just the plot line, the cinematography, I can never pronounce this word. The cinematography, it's almost artwork. I mean, if you see, it's so beautiful. And throughout the series, they maintained a particular aesthetic, this aesthetic called dark academia. They kind of maintained that throughout the series, and I just loved it. It's so beautiful. The entire journey, it's been a journey, and this is one series that is going to stay with me forever. I am really attached to this series. I'm attached to all the characters. And I mean, this is not really the end, because there's going to be another movie coming, and I don't know, I have a feeling that the movie will be more about Tommy's son, Duke. he was suddenly introduced in the series, and there was no scope for the character to evolve or grow. But I could be wrong. I don't know what the movie is going to be about, but I'm really excited about it because so far I have not been disappointed. And that's my own interpretation, my own review. You can have your own opinion. Okay, so I talked a lot. Thank you so much for being patient. And if you have listened to this far, I really love you so much. That's it for today. I'm gonna be back again with more podcast episodes. Thank you so much. I love you guys so much. I'll see you again. I'll meet you again in another one of my podcast episode.